Well, our guest preacher today knows a lot about going through a lot. And many of you have already met him. He's been here with us before. His name is Rabbi Mark Weiner. And he is a wonderful, wonderful human being. He was raised in Dallas, Texas, but I can forgive him for that, maybe being from Oklahoma and all. He is retired now, but he spent 13 years as the senior rabbi of the West London Synagogue, the largest synagogue in London. And he's also a veteran of the United States Army as a chaplain. And he spent 30 years as a chaplain also with police officers and firefighters. And as I said at the 9 o'clock, I just have to mention in this place, we're so fond of queens here at MCC. And so Rabbi Mark was awarded the Order of the British Empire by the Queen of Queens herself, Queen Elizabeth II, for his amazing, courageous work building interfaith relations between Jews, Muslims, and Christians. And he is internationally known for this work, and he is bringing that work here to South Florida as well. And I've been very honored to work with him and to be a part of things he's invited me to participate in. So it is such an honor to have Rabbi Mark here with us today, and I want to say thank you so much, Mark, for being here, for having to do 2 services as we had here on Sunday mornings. And will you join me now in welcoming Rabbi Mark Weiner.
I am just utterly amazed that there are some people here right now who also sat through my sermon earlier. That is either a sign of your masochism or that you got a really good sleep the first time and want another one. It's really great. Now, I emphasize, and I really apologize, because when I accepted this role, I was under the false illusion that Leah Brand was not going to be here. And I was so looking forward to talking about her when she wasn't here. Because my whole life, I specialized in talking about people who weren't here even though they were there lying in a box in front of me. So you get your eulogy ahead of time. I love this woman. She is everything good and wonderful and terrific in the world. She extends all of the really wonderful stuff which was within her and shares it with you in such a way that melds you into the wonderful community that you are, that reflects exactly those qualities of why I love her. Most of all, her incredible, wonderful sense of humor, her brilliance intellectually. I have known a lot of clergy over my life, and I mentioned earlier that in every place I was, my best friend in town was one of the ministers. That was true no matter where I was. And she is that soulmate of mine, forgive me.
Oh, it's okay.
And share.
Absolutely.
And I know that when I have issues that I've got to discuss, and there's only one other person besides my wife that I want to share them with. That's the one. And it's because when she and I talk, and I've been a student of Christianity my whole life, growing up first as a Jew in Utah with all Mormons, and then growing up in Texas with the Methodists and the Southern Baptists, and then spending a whole lifetime in the Catholic Church. That's a story unto itself. and then becoming known as the Rabbi of Londonistan, living in the middle of Arab London and working with all the imams and the mosques and the Muslims, and on and on and on. I know religious people, and people who know their texts and who understand them in a deep and profound way. And what's magical about what she does is it's a way which makes her authentic as a Christian, but doesn't exclude her relationships with others who are not, whether they're not Christians or they're not religious. That she has such a deep sense of who she is as a Christian that she can be, in the finest way, Christ-like in the sharing of herself with others who are not the same as her. Very special, very, very, very dear to me and very precious to you. Now, I really worked hard to try to come up with some LGBTQ jokes because I have spent my whole career specializing in anti-Semitic jokes, Jewish jokes, okay? And you think of all the Jewish jokes I could do an hour and a half right now and stand up with just Jewish jokes, nothing else. And I've got one for every occasion. Anything that comes up, I've got a joke for it. But I think that's going to be one of her specialties, because with her sense of humor and her authenticity as an LGBTQ woman, minister, leader, etc., she's going to create the genre. So we're going to all help her along. But what's special about all the Jewish jokes is that we don't really want to have a race as to who has been prejudiced against more. This is not a race that anybody wants to win, believe me. But as Jews, we have a very, very, very long history of having bigotry and prejudice turned against us. And to me, it's ridiculous. I mean, I spent my whole life working with Jews and teaching Jews. If anybody has a right to be anti-Semitic, I do. But having dealt with the prejudice of others and the bigotry of others, the best way to handle it, the absolutely best way of handling it, is to turn it around, use some of the themes of those who hate us, and to make it into something funny in which we end up being triumphant. In other words, we take that which is a liability and that with which we suffer, which is the prejudice directed against us, and through humor we turn it around to make ourselves even bigger, even as we all laugh together. Now, I just want to share a couple of little ones with you. I have millions. I'm a sports nut. A lot of people are. And one of my old chestnuts is that bar mitzvah is defined as the day on which a Jewish boy realizes that he's more likely to own a major sports team than play on one. And I mean, honestly, the Miami Heat, the Miami Dolphins, and the Marlins are all proof that lives. And in Britain, it was the same situation, because every football club was owned by a Jewish boy who really wanted to be on the pitch, but was really an accountant and was really good as a businessman and ran the team. So, what am I going to tell you? And my favorite, which kind of spins out of that, one of my British Jewish jokes is that and this was from a British Jewish humorist, Chaim Berman, who wrote that the only British sport that Jews do really well at is horse racing. I mean, the Brits are really into horse racing. Why? Because in horse racing, the horses do the running. I could go on and on and on, but I won't. What we're here to talk about is 9/11, and I was in London working as a rabbi in 9/11. I remember it very well, and I'm sure that everybody in this room, the little kids have already left, but everybody in this room remembers where he or her was, where he or she, well, oh boy, where he or she was on 9/11. You know, it's just like those of us who are old enough remember exactly where we were when we heard that President Kennedy had been assassinated, or Martin Luther King, or whatever those things we've been through. We remember those moments. And 9/11, I was in London, and what was so significant about 9/11 was what had happened on 9/10, the day before. The day before, on 9/10, I was having lunch, as I do. Incidentally, good food. One of the good things about coming to 2 services, you get 2 eats. Christians usually don't eat that well. No, seriously. I mean, I think one of the advantages of LGBTQ is you add the dimension of food. But one of my Jewish jokes is that every Jewish holiday can be reduced to the following formula. They tried to oppress us, God saved us, let's eat. And eating is really, really important in Judaism. It's really, really important in Islam. I mean, honestly, boy, the Muslims really are into eating. Hindus, oh boy, do they eat. Buddhists eat. But Christians? I mean, honest to God. Especially having spent so much time in the Catholic Church, I put these big things.
Rabbi, you need to go to the Southern Baptist and the Pentecostal.
They eat? But I did. That was fried chicken dinners and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, you guys eat well. That's good. I like that. Real communion. At any rate, we were having lunch together. My friend, Sheikh Dr. Zaki Badawi, who was an Egyptian-born imam, who was the head of he was the principal of the Muslim College of London, that was focused on training British Muslims to be imams. It's a whole discussion unto itself. And then there was my friend Nicholas Holtom, who was the vicar of the iconic church in Trafalgar Square, St. Martin's in the Field. And we were buddies already, and we were having a good time at lunch, carrying on and swapping stories, and my jokes are always the best ones, but you know, whatever. We had a really good time. And then 9/11 happened. The 3 of us knew exactly what to do, and that was to make 9/11 a day which struck like a dagger to the heart of America and to Western civilization and to the entire world. And to make of that 9/10.
All right, yes.
The day when 3 friends, a vicar, an imam, and a rabbi, are not only having lunch together, but are being friends together. And we took that message of 9/10 in one thing after another that we did, including most of all a broadcast over the BBC that went worldwide from St. Martin's in the Field on the Sunday after. They have a Sunday worship service on the BBC every week. And that week was from St. Martin's in the Field, a special 9/11 Sunday service with our buddy Nick leading the service as the Christian priest, and his 2 buddies, Rabbi Mark and Sheikh Zaki, delivering the sermon together. And our sermon and our message over and over and over again was that we had to respond to 9/11 by not letting the bigots win, by not letting the Muslim bigots win, and by not letting those who would respond to Muslim bigots by becoming Christian or Jewish bigots. And we got plenty of them. I wasn't talking about the Christians, I was just talking about the Jews. We all got plenty of bigots to go around. And our world is full of 9/11. Our world is full of angry, nasty hatred of one person toward another, of one group toward another. I was not surprised that 9/11 happened. I was only surprised that they didn't use a suitcase atomic weapon or some kind of biological weapon. It was so dumb and low tech to fly planes into a building. Wow, what incredible power that was, what they did to us, and how much more we then did to ourselves in response to 9/11. We became the allies of those extremist Muslims. We became their best weapons by becoming vessels of their hatred. We too often started preaching lessons of hatred toward Islam and carried out their vision of a world which inevitably rejects Islam, which is what they want to see things at most of all. We did their work for them. We did it, and we turned against each other. Well, Zaki and Nick and I were not going to let that happen. And every place we went and every place we preached, we stood together. We did it on the BBC, on worldwide worship service. We did it at St. Paul's Cathedral with the Queen and the royal family and the British cabinet, and we did it at Westminster Abbey, all that within one weekend. And we kept doing it, and kept doing it, and kept doing it, and kept doing it. Because the greatness of a person is determined not remotely by your never having been hurt or prejudiced against or knocked down, but the greatness is by the way you take the rejection, you take the bigotry, you take the getting hurt, and you transform it into a powerful movement to reach out to others. My favorite verse in the Bible, Leah asked me that I should tell her so she could make that the theme of this morning. And I told her simple, Leah, it's Eben ma'asu abonim, haitala rosh binah. Everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, right.
The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. It's a text which is essential in Judaism and essential in Christianity alike.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, whatever our differences, we are very closely related as religions. And part of it is that those verses to one are verses to the other with some different interpretations, but still, they're profoundly important. But think, all of you in this room, of the way that that verse plays out in your life. Think of all the rejection that you've experienced in your life. In so many ways. Easy to talk about how much rejection those of us who are LGBTQ have experienced just for being that. A part of their lives which for too many people has been allowed to define their lives. But for so many other reasons, so many other things, for so many absurd, ridiculous, nonsensical reasons, we get rejected and knocked down and count it out. And the way we respond best is when we take that stone that the builders rejected and we make it the cornerstone of the building of righteousness that we are creating to live in and to welcome others into, and to become the cornerstone of the bridge that we are building to cross over the chasms of hatred and bigotry which divide us, and to reach out to others and say, I know what it's like to be rejected and hated and have bigotry directed toward me. And out of that, I am going to reach out to you. Now, we were together right after the Pulse nightclub. The next day, we were here together. And Wilfredo Ruiz, who had been with us, and that Leah has been with me before. Wilfredo, a Puerto Rican, who became a Muslim, who became a lawyer, who became an imam, who was a chaplain in the Navy, as an imam, as a Muslim. And I don't know, I haven't talked with him about all of his theology. I've got my theology of LGBTQ all worked out. I could talk about it till I'm blue in the face, about within the context of God's creation of humanity, all different, and on and on. It's easy. I'm not sure exactly how he does that within Islam, but he could. It's actually pretty easy. I've studied enough Muslim theology to be able to do that. But he was with us all the way. All the way. He came to you, I think, a week later, 2 weeks later, and over and over again, we're going to be together again. That's very important. And right after, there was, I don't know whether you saw it, but there was a major movement among Muslims in Florida to reach out to the LGBTQ community and to affirm the bond. Boy, where in the Muslim world did that happen? That was the result of what we've been doing here in our quiet little ways of building those bridges back and forth. Wilfredo and others in the Muslim community felt welcome here. The MCC, they knew Leah, we had all of our relationships. So when Orlando happened, they were ready to respond. And they wanted to make clear that that Muslim extremist bastard who shot up Pulse was not speaking for them. And they reached out. And they reached out. The 9/11 happened, and it keeps happening. And it's going to keep happening. Because the world has not changed that much. It has changed, thank God, most radically for the LGBTQ community in ways that are miraculous. If you think about where we've come, I can think of nothing in my lifetime that changed so fast and so quickly toward the right. But we got a long way to go. Just like as much as we thought we had dealt with all the devils about being a woman, wow, that's a long way from being finished, and all the prejudices against gayness are not just going to go away. These are profoundly, deeply rooted in civilization, just like I know from my experience of being a Jew. And it's the way it is. People are bigoted, people are racist, just like they're neurotic. It's like it's the normal default option of humanity to be prejudiced. But we got to know how to respond. We respond together with each other, reaching up to each other, reaching into ourselves, dealing with all of the bigotry and the prejudice which is within us. Most of all, toward whatever we are. To remember all of the parts of ourselves which are prejudiced against LGBTQ, women, men, whatever, against Jews, against Christians, against Muslims, that's against people of every race, because people are basically bigoted, just like people are basically sinful and people are basically neurotic. One of the great resources that we have as Jews and Christians is our common understanding of sin and human sinfulness, and the way that we overcome it through confession and through repentance. We don't deny that we're sinful. We acknowledge that we're sinful, and we seek forgiveness of those that we've wronged, and we seek forgiveness from God for having done it. And even when we sin again, and even when we have bigotry again, and when we have prejudice again, or when we say something which is hurtful to somebody else, we go back in the same process over and over again, because that's part of being a human being. And we need each other to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge each other, and to be in a place where we can share the vulnerabilities that we feel, the sense of profound rejection that we feel on all sorts of scores. Personal, having to do with some identity issue, having to do with something, who knows, whatever it is. We are rejected for every imaginable reason. But to be available to each other, and to be available to ourselves, and to say that weakness from being rejected is not, or need not be, a source of weakness, because I can make it into a source of strength. Even ma'asu ha'onim hayta rosh pina. The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone, has become the basis of the best that I am and the best that I can do for the world. We can do that together. All of us rejected in so many different ways, and all of us capable of building temples of the soul and bridges of decency and love and understanding to each other and to others and to the wonderful world around us. Amen.